Jon Stewart, thank you for coming in. I know you're under the weather. It's nice of you to come in.
I have the bubons, but I'm happy to be here. I'm here to take me medicine.
You are here at the 24-hour political pundit perpetual panic conflictinator.
Yeah. Conflictinator, by the way, is a reference to Phineas and Ferb, the cartoon.
Oh.
The evil Doofenshmirtz, Dr. Doofenshmirtz. My kids watch it. Everything he makes is an inator. My conflictinator. So that's...
You don't do all that many interviews. I think I've read every one that you've done in the past couple of years because I tend to over-prepare. Why did you want to talk to me? Why did you want to do this?
After the rally, you know, whenever you go out there, whatever you put out, you can only control your intention. You can't control its perception or how people receive it, and you can control your execution. So when people are perceiving it as something, people that I respect are perceiving it as something that we didn't perceive it as, sort of either two or three things. One is we were inartful in the way that we conceived it and presented it. Our intention was wrong or off, not clear, or it's being misperceived. So I guess there's probably a fourth. I don't know what that would be.
On the issue of the perception of the rally in media, Bill Maher's criticism of it was this. He said, when Jon announced his rally, he said that the national conversation is dominated by people on the right who believe Obama's a socialist and people on the left who believe 9/11 was an inside job. But I can't name any Democratic leaders who think 9/11 was an inside job.
Right.
Republican leaders who think Obama's a socialist. It's all of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a paraphrase of what we said. Again, that's probably in our We didn't say 9/11 was an inside job. What we said was these are Marxists on the left, and that Bush went to war in Iraq. And I can't even remember exactly
Bush is
what it
Hitler
was.
and Obama's Hitler.
No, it was something, but it was more about that 9/11 was a chance for Halliburton to get their hands on oil contracts. And so it's, again, I take his point. It's a fair point, but that's not exactly what we said, and it's certainly not, I think, that's not the seminal thrust of what we were saying. Again, the intention was not to say that that's people on the left and that's people on the right. The intention is to say that we've all bought into that the conflict in this country is left and right. Liberal, conservative, red, blue. And all the news networks have bought into that. CNN sort of started it. They had this idea that, you know, the fight in Washington is Republicans and Democrats. So why don't we isolate that and we'll stand back here and that's, you know, Democrats and Republicans will go at it. Red and blue staters will go at it. And what it does is it amplifies a division that I actually don't think is the right fight. But if what you're asking me is, do I believe that? What he's saying, that's what I believe? No. But what I do believe is both sides have their way of shutting down debate. And the news networks have allowed these two sides to become the fight in the country. And I think the fight in the country is corruption versus not corruption. Extremists versus regular. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what's the lefty way of shutting down? Well, I mean,
Okay, yeah. You've said Bush is a war criminal. Now, that may be technically true. In my world, war criminal is Pol Pot or the Nuremberg trials.
Or Harry
It's not
Truman,
saying
but then you took that back.
Yeah. And I did for good reason, because I don't think he was. And I think that, you know, again, we have to define our terms. But I think that's such an incendiary charge that when you put it into conversation as, well, technically he is, that may be right, but it feels like a conversation stopper, not a conversation starter. The complaint was, in the clip reel, we had a woman shouting as an example of dialogue that we were talking about not being helpful. A woman at a meeting shouting, Bush is a war criminal. That's really where that came from, not from saying it in normal conversation.
Right.
We were talking about tone there, not content necessarily. We were talking about standing up in the middle of a meeting and just shouting that.
Right.
My problem is it's become tribal. And if you have 24-hour networks that focus, their job is to highlight the conflict between two sides, where I don't think that's the main conflict in our society. That was the point of the rally, was to deflate that idea that that's a real conflict, red and blue, Democrat, Republican. But I feel like there's a bigger difference between people with kids and people who don't have kids than red state, blue state.
But I guess the way I follow your logic and I believe what you're saying up until a point. And the
I'm glad somebody's following.
No, I do follow your logic. But it's,
right.
I mean, the people interrupting meetings and interrupting rallies are direct action activists who are doing stuff to be purposely disruptive and a pain in order to sort of throw a wrench in the works.
Right.
And then on the other side,
so you're saying that it's really nothing.
Well, it's not that it's nothing. It's just not being done with the same level of authority as it is on the right. Like the Second Amendment remedies thing.
Right.
That's people running for Senate.
But how did you handle town hall meetings when Tea Partiers interrupted the town hall meetings? With the same level of dismissiveness? Or did you handle it with the sense that, what's going on here, these angry people? Who are these angry people?
Well, my coverage of that was about it being organized.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, that is, your coverage of it was to delegitimize it. That it was actually not real. It was AstroTurf.
No, actually no. It was, I think my approach to that was to say this is being used as a widespread political tactic by people with a lot of money and a lot of stake in the policy issues.
Right.
And they're sort of deploying direct action activists in a way that we haven't seen before.
Would you say that the general spirit of the block of coverage on MSNBC was as dismissive of the woman who stands up and says Bush is a war criminal, or the people at the town hall? Do you think that they were viewed through the same prism?
I think that they were viewed through an appropriately proportional prism, because I think Code Pink is like 12 ladies, and I think that literally half of Indiana says they identify with the Tea Party. And so,
but again, they say they identify with the Tea Party. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Identify how? Identify with the idea that they like smaller government, or identify with yelling in a town hall? This is, I'm not saying, look, I love the voices that I hear on MSNBC, and there's a difference between, here's what's unfair about what I do. This is really here's a great thing that I think is unfair. You're one person with one great voice and sincere and studying, but I'm a climate scientist. I study weather patterns and climate. You're talking about the weather, and maybe these networks are not meant to be viewed in aggregate, but there is an aggregate. There is an effect. And when people say, well, you're influential too, I'm a 22-minute show. And when I say, puppets making crank calls in front of me, I don't mean that to diminish comedy. I mean that is not then reinforced through the next person. It's not a relay. And there is a amplifying effect to the relay.
Yeah.
And this is not, I want to make perfectly clear, because I think if the argument is you do exactly what Fox do and you're as bad as Fox, anybody who has watched our show in any measure would understand the special place in our hearts for Fox.
Yeah.
So again, it feels to me like false equivalence sounds like something that you're doing as well. We have a tendency to grant amnesty to people that we agree with, and to overly demonize people we don't. I do the same thing. I think everybody does.
If you would like to write to me in defense of Code Pink, I'm all ears. I was just trying to make the point about the difference in size of the disruptive pants brigades on each side. But go ahead. Send your hate mail to rachel@msnbc.com. I promise to read it. And while you're at it, here's fair warning of what is ahead in my continuing interview with Mr. Stewart.
Fox is not partisan either. They're really not.
But they never criticized George W. Bush for anything, even when he was doing things that were sort of not conservative. They never criticized him.
But they're not, they are ideological, but they're not, I don't know that they're partisan. Here's what's the most amazing thing about this interview. I have not thrown up once while we've been doing this. And that is, I believe that may be the longest in 24 hours that I have gone. You, my friend, are like ginger root. You are the ginger root of interviewers.
There was, in fact, no barfing, none at all. That and even bigger, better surprises ahead. Stay with us. There's a lot of people on the right who have made this decision that they'll only talk to media who agrees with them.
That's their greatest triumph.
Yeah. And that's new. I think they're only able to do that now because the conservative media is big enough that they can still use it to get their voice out.
You know, I don't think that's a new concept. I don't think that's a Republican or right-wing concept. I think they've executed it pretty well. I'd say Bill Clinton was pretty good at delegitimizing. The great thing that they've done, I think the brilliance of Fox is they've delegitimized the idea of editorial authority while exercising incredible editorial authority,
right?
Which is, it's amazing. And they also have the game that they're all out to get us. So any criticism of them can be filtered through the idea that it's persecution. It's not. This isn't criticism. It's persecution.
Right.
And that's a tough distinction to make. But nobody likes to be criticized. I don't like to see people that I like and respect go, you know, that rally was useless. It did nothing, and in fact, you're crazy or wrong. Like, but I understand that I put something out there. I made something, and people should have a chance to go, this is what I thought it was. I just want to make sure that I'm clear about what I thought it was. Not what I thought it was, what it was.
Yeah.
Because I made it.
But then what do you do with the noise? Like, what do you do with Second Amendment remedies, with the Koran-burning pastor, with the, like terror babies and Louis? Like, if you don't cover it, it doesn't go away.
How did Fox delegitimize media? By just relentlessly...
By saying biased.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the answer to that is, well, why don't we form just a more ideological network? That's fighting fire with fire to some extent.
I don't know that that was the answer, though.
No?
I mean, I don't think that we...
Do you think MSNBC has changed over the last 5 years? You know, there is a genetic linkage between Keith. Keith was the first, and it was a voice like in the wilderness. People were like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you can say that? You know. And then you came on and Ed, and again, now I'm talking about climate as opposed to weather. But it does create a linkage that I think it would be hard for you to say, like, geez, I don't know if we're really doing that.
Well,
then
no,
what are you doing?
I think what happens is that I think the media, having been derided for so long as being liberal and biased and being very afraid of that charge, when Keith spoke out the way he did, he essentially came out of the closet as a liberal, and it nothing bad happened. It was okay. He grew his audience, if anything. And so I think it gave network executives some courage to say, okay, people who are liberals can be on TV as long as they call themselves liberals.
See, I think that
and then they hire the rest of us.
Network executives work on courage is, I think what they did is they went, why is Fox News kicking our asses? We need to fight this with a similar or sensational. You know, this is an arms race.
But you know, it's not. I mean, being here and having those conversations, that never happens. What happens is, look, Keith's making money. How can we do more of that? I mean, that's more the conversation than.
That's what I just said.
But no, you said that that Fox is beating us. How can we be more like Fox?
Well, no. How do we? Keith is making money, and it seems like I don't think you can separate the atmosphere of Fox and think that network executives don't look at nothing succeeds like excess or whatever it said. Nothing exceeds like excess. You know, if that was a measured network and a measured tone, I don't think you would see people raising the bar on graphics and all those other things. People are fighting. The problem with 24-hour news cycle is it's built for a very particular thing, 9/11. Other than that, there really isn't 24 hours of stuff to talk about in the same way. Now, the problem is, how do you keep people watching it? OJ's not going to kill someone every day. So that's gone. So what do you have to do? You have to elevate the passion of everything else that happens that might even be somewhat mundane and elevate it to the extent that this is breaking news. This is developing news. This is breaking developing news. The aggregate effect of that is that you begin to lose the lexicon. You begin to lose any meaning of what breaking news means, or urgent, or look at this, or dangerous. That was our montage at the end. It wasn't saying,
just
this
hype,
is crazy.
hype.
Right. It was, the language then has to become sharper, louder, to cut through more and more of the noise. And what I'm saying is, maybe there is a way to not engage in the idea, not to accept the premise. There is a premise out there. The premise is we are all on this kind of axis of left-right. Maybe there's a different premise. And I don't mean that in the way of partisanship. I mean it in the way of they cover politics. Politics is a Democratic and Republican game. It is left and right. I think the conflict that would be more appropriate to divide a news channel to would be corruption, non-corruption. And that, I don't mean corruption necessarily in the classic sense of this man has $90,000 in his refrigerator. We should really check that out. He's a congressman. That too. It's sort of like the you know, one of my favorite things. Anderson Cooper does. Yeah, I think he does a really nice job. He's fun to watch, and you as well. And I like on an individual basis a lot of this stuff. Again, I watch way too much of it. I really do, and that is in itself corrupting. But he's got a bit on his show that I love called "Keeping Him Honest."
Yeah.
Which is just so funny to me, because isn't that the subtext? It'd be like me introducing, I've got a new segment called Telling Jokes to an Audience. It just felt, you know, whenever you hear that, you're like, isn't that what this whole thing is?
Well, that's only true, though, if you accept the premise that you're criticizing, which is that the thing to do to attract an audience is to point out conflict, to point out hypocrisy, to point out things that are wrong.
I think the thing to do, if you are going to add an ingredient to news, and everyone seems to, there is news. News exists.
Yeah.
The nightly news, those things, that does exist. If you're adding an ingredient, and I think if you're going to be on the air for 24 hours, you're going to need some ingredients.
None of us are on for 24 hours solid. We're all have a piece of it.
Well,
yeah.
MSNBC, you're not even on the weekends. Really? Do I have to see another guy eat another guy's brains on MSNBC in a lockdown cell?
Yes, you do.
All right. But do you know what I'm saying? You have to fill it with other ingredients. So maybe the ingredients would be that not to necessarily just amplify that one aspect of the battle.
I do think there's a difference between having a point of view and being a partisan. I think that
I agree with that.
I mean, I am a liberal. It doesn't mean that I think of Democrats as being on my team. I
but
like
Fox
liberal
is not
policies.
partisan either. They're really not.
But they never criticized George W. Bush for anything, even when he was doing things that were sort of not conservative. They never criticized him.
But they're not. But they are ideological, but they're not. I don't know that they're partisan. It certainly falls under the rubric of partisanship, but it's not. There's a lot of Republicans that can't get on board. That they won't shine their light on.
So they'll pick between Republicans, you mean?
I think that's right.
Will they ever pick a Democrat?
I think they would.
Yeah.
I think Lieberman would be a guy that they would pick. They would pick a guy that they felt gave them credit. Everybody picks people to give themselves cover. You always the most valuable person in the world is a turncoat. Because he's the guy that can come on and you can go, this guy was a Democrat. This guy was a Democrat. Now he's sitting here saying, you're right.
Right.
Obama is nuts. What I'm saying is not so much that the distinctions don't exist, is that they have been so blown. You talked about proportionality.
Yeah.
It's surprising to see somebody, you know, again, this is the unfair criticism because you're one person. But proportionality is not the strong suit of the 24-hour news networks.
Right.
I always wonder, I think to myself, how would they handle the moon landing? Because could they give it more coverage than they gave Balloon Boy? Because Balloon Boy was kind of everywhere. So what would they do? What would their font size be?
Right.
The New York Times has a font size. The difference is newspapers and blogs are an active process. You have to look at them. They can make editorial judgment. But you are an active participant in it. You pick where you want to go and where you want to read and how you want to do it. The TV tells you it's a passive experience.
Yeah.
Our top story, you know what's always a great exercise? Look at the difference between the top story on cable news and the top story in the newspapers. You'd have thought Juan Williams killed people.
Right.
It was everywhere. And what it was, the reason why it was everywhere is because it fell so beautifully into the narrative of left and right, liberal, conservative. It fell perfectly into the only fight that they seem to feel matters. And all I'm saying is that is, in many ways, a funhouse mirror of what actually really matters.
I went into this interview today with Jon Stewart with a handful of questions about the media, and then I was going to say, so Jon, are you sick of talking about the media? You are? Me too. Let's talk Pakistan. But there was no getting sick of talking about the media, so there was no Pakistan. But there was an unexpected diversion into trying to understand George W. Bush. On waterboarding, Bush in his book says...
Is that what's next?
He didn't
Is that what happens now? Oh my God, what happens to me now?
My interview with Jon Stewart of The Daily Show today elicited a trenchant critique from him about the 24-hour cable news world. It also let me get some stuff off my chest. You think of it differently, but I think a lot of people who watch your show and who watch cable news think of what we do as not being that different, which sucks for me because I used to be the sort of mildly amusing person talking, like using humor to tell the story of the wasteful F-35 second engine on that fighter jet, and now I'm the person trying to be Jon Stewart and sucking.
I love that F-35 that you did. That wasteful engine bit, that killed him. You know, it used to be my bit.
That's ahead. Please stay with us.
I always feel like I don't care where it comes from. If it's right, it's right.
Right.
But that's like that's an earned authority that I think is difficult to have when the environment is so polarizing.
So then, how do you deal with stuff that people believe that just isn't true? Like
you cannot control crazy.
But so here on Iraq, right? Bush accepted the Delphi report and everything, saying that there were no weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
And he admitted it, and he changed his rationales for the war in response to that finding and everything.
Well, he again, like, did he change it or did he just
started talking about other reasons?
They went out with 4 rationales for the war. Now, I agree with you. The main one was fear. The main one was Colin Powell was waving anthrax.
Yeah.
When he was down at the UN, he wasn't waving freedom juice. He was waving anthrax, and I get that. But there were 4 rationales, and they probably did that to provide themselves a certain amount of cover. There's no question that they ranked one of them this. But even in the Delphi report, when he said, for instance, you guys did it on the show. Well, Saddam Hussein was actually trying to get around sanctions and get. I don't know if you remember this.
The UN Oil for Food program.
UN Oil for Food
gaming
program.
the system.
Gaming the system, right? But if you follow that soundbite for another 15 seconds, he does say to reconstitute his weapons program.
So that he could get money, so that he could use that money to reconstitute his weapons program.
So he was,
right.
Now, again, I see it in your eyes, you're like, but that's horse, but whatever. But all I'm saying is, it is there. It's not as black and white. You know, I think, when I look at the left, the left always says, we're not black and white. I didn't like Bush because he was so black and white, and there's not nuance. Do you think that the left ever suffers from that same myopia?
I think bad arguments exist everywhere. Yeah.
So why not just do bad arguments? Why be... You are who you are, and I think you're a person that doesn't like bad arguments.
I'm trying to pursue bad arguments wherever I find them. But let me finish this point about Bush and WMDs. Right. Bush accepted that Saddam wasn't pursuing weapons of mass destruction. That he changed the way that he talked about the war, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if he accepted it.
Well,
I think he
didn't dispute the report when it came out.
Yeah, but I think they were like, yeah, I was really sad we didn't find any.
Yes, that's definitely true.
I got the sense that he was like, yeah, I'm too bad that report didn't find the weapons that I knew were there.
But now he's back in his book to saying Saddam was pursuing weapons of mass destruction. That's he says, he declares that as if it is fact, and it's just not true. And it's not even an assertion.
It's true depending on where you start the pursuit. In other words, is my son pursuing his car? Yes, my son very much wants a car. Now he's 6. So he doesn't have a job yet, but he is pursuing a car. He's got to wait a while.
Yeah.
And a lot of things are going to have to happen. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I get that that's a manipulation, but it is also, in some ways, a subtle narrative manipulation to just dismiss that.
But it is he's doing it on purpose to make people think that the war in Iraq was justified because of weapons of mass destruction. You wouldn't say Saddam was pursuing WMD and the world is safer because he's gone. Do you think he really believes
the world is safer without Saddam Hussein, even if he wasn't pursuing weapons of mass destruction? Do you think
I believe he thinks the world is safer, but I don't think he believes the world is safer because Saddam was pursuing weapons of mass destruction, because he wasn't. And so...
Right. But that's, again, like, that's a belief. That's what you believe. But I don't know that, you know, I don't know the guy. I'm the same way about his arguments. I do think he believes Saddam Hussein was dangerous and a madman and had weapons of mass destruction. And the fact that we couldn't find him just means that he had taken, you know, an asthma recess and was just waiting till he could do it again because we were watching him. I disagree with the idea that it is, because one is truly dishonest and borderline evil. And I guess that's where I get the point. Like, I'm trying to wrap around my head about the idea that someone who would say you could waterboard isn't evil. And that's where I have to go back to, like, okay, Franklin Delano Roosevelt interned 120,000 Japanese Americans. Was he evil? I think you have to examine your own orthodoxy before, you can feel comfortable. But let's really try and fight on the most precise and proportional terms we can.
Okay.
If possible.
And on waterboarding, Bush in his book says...
Is that what's next?
He didn't Is
that what happens now? Oh my God, what happens to me now?
He didn't just say, he says in his book, he didn't just say, yes, waterboard him. He said, in his writing of his, damn right, waterboard the guy.
I know.
I mean, it's hard for me to believe that he did that. He says that's what he did. But what that means is that the people who are arguing that waterboarding / torture is a bad thing lost the argument, and it's now a political asset to brag about having waterboarding.
I kind of think they were always like that. I never got the sense that there was a sense of shame. I always thought there was a sense of legal maneuvering.
Yeah.
I never thought they felt like they were covering it up because they thought it was a bad idea or it would paint them as evil.
Just didn't want to get nailed for it.
I think that was it, or they wanted to figure out a way to do it. Now, this comes to the next part, though. What is their intention? Is his intention truly to save American lives? Does that justify everything? Well, maybe it doesn't. Where do you draw the line then? Why don't they just waterboard everybody? A lot of people get shot in gang violence in the city. Why not waterboard gang members? Then you get into all these other arguments. But if the place that you start from is he's an evil man who did that to lie to us so that he could take gratuitous pleasure in his own masculinity, or whatever it is, that does.
No, but that's. I mean, nobody's. Right. I'm not saying that. Nobody's saying
and
that.
But that's an example of again pushing it too far. But people, that's what people do. They take things and they go into the next realm.
But I just don't think that. I don't think that I do that. I mean, I can't speak for everybody here, but I don't think that, and I am definitely part of the conflictinator. I'm definitely part of this whole machine, prime time and the whole bit.
Right.
But I don't.
Right.
I think that the criticism of George Bush on waterboarding is a precise criticism. I don't think it's this guy is an evil monster. I think it is that was wrong for the country and he shouldn't be defending it.
Yeah, I don't get the sense I don't get the sense that the argument is as passive as that, but okay, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
I think that it's somewhere in between. I think that the argument generally has not been, this is wrong for the country and it has overstepped a certain line in the thing. I think it was a little more
well, it's impassioned, certainly. I mean, this is wrong for the country. I'm happy to scream it if that makes it less of a strong
I would suggest that it wasn't necessarily just this is wrong for the country, but that you're a bad man.
I don't think that I think that you are glossing over the gray areas in a way that isn't fair.
Maybe.
That could very well be, he says. Or, yeah, there's more. Stay with us. More of my interview with Jon Stewart ahead. Do you think that The Daily Show functions just as entertainment? I sort of feel like The Daily Show...
I mean...
Yeah. Satire is it's more than entertainment. It is engagement and it is criticism.
Here's what I would say. I feel more of a kinship to Jerry Seinfeld than I do to, what you guys do or what CNN does or what NBC does. In that he is able to comedically articulate an intangible for people. When they see it, they go, "God, it's been in my head, and I know it's been in there, but I've never put it together with that kind of rhythm in 4 levels." And that's hilarious that you were able to articulate that. He is a craftsman at that. Like he's the best at being able to craft those moments of sort of these intangible, esoteric things and put them together into something that really connects with people. We try and do the same thing, but with a more political, social avenue. But it's still, if you were to look at our process, he's much more our process than the news is. Does that make sense? But
what I know of your process seems very similar to the way that I put my show together.
You really need to change the way.
I know. I mean,
we have to, because we're parodying a news organization, we have to have the logistics and mechanics of one.
Yeah.
But the process that the material goes through is not a news process. But
it's fact checking.
Well, we do that, though, not to be journalists. We do that because it wouldn't be that funny.
If it was a lie.
Yeah, people would be like, I think it's pronounced Baltimore, not Baltimore. Nah, you know, it's you do that because untrue things stand out like a sore thumb in the.
Even though you identify yourself as fake news and having built with a fake news process.
Yeah.
I think
we don't say fake. I mean, fake is wrong. It's a misnomer that we use, and it's glib. It's not. We're not news anything.
Right.
We're commenting on the news comedically.
I think that that you think of it differently, but I think a lot of people who watch your show and who watch cable news think of what we do as not being that different, which sucks for me because I used to be the sort of mildly amusing person talking, like using humor to tell the story of the wasteful F-35 second engine on that fighter jet, and now I'm the person trying to be Jon Stewart and sucking.
I love that F-35
Yes.
that you did. That wasteful engine bit, that killed him. You know, it used to be my bit.
It's even if you're not launching it in the same way, it's being received in the same way, and the barriers between what actually happens on cable news that you're satirizing and what you're doing, we're not seen as being all that different. Is that
the only thing that I would say? It doesn't worry me. I think I can understand how it would worry people in the news, but what I have existed. I am the Highlander. You know, there has been a form of me around in forever, a comedian who, with political and social concepts, criticizes them from a haughty yet ultimately feckless perch, throwing things like that. The box that I'm in has always existed. The box that you're talking about, I think, is new, and so I do think. If that's moving towards me, that's okay, but I really feel like I'm on pretty solid ground with the footsteps of my ancestors. You know, that's all, you know, I don't happen if the Smothers Brothers don't happen. Bill Maher, you know, those guys all paved a way for something that I do, but that's always existed.
That's kind of a news flash, right? The Daily Show no longer wishes to be considered fake news. They'd like to be considered as not news at all. I still think it's news. The finale ahead, including me getting a talking to about the word teabag. You don't think it was funny that they were saying teabag the White House before the White House teabags you? The caricature of the left as being as vociferous as the right is something that... I don't think that's the caricature of the left. I really don't. Okay. I think the caricature of the left is one that is slightly... that they use as a cudgel. Didn't you hate when the Republicans used to use the phrase Democrat? Democrat. The Democrat Party has the word rat in it. Just seemed dickish. Yeah. Democrat Party. Or when you spoke out against the war, there was a subtle undertone of you're un-American. You don't want to win the war on terror. Well, I think that what also comes out sometimes from the other side is teabagger. Now that's, I think, derogatory. And I don't think anybody would mistake it for that, for anything other than that. And it's been used on this network quite frequently by hosts, by guests. You don't think it was You don't think it was funny that they were saying teabag the White House before the White House teabags you? I thought it was funny for a day. Yeah. I thought it was funny for a day. Funny enough to play the John Waters clip of the teabagging thing on the bar? For a day. Yeah. Probably wouldn't have run with it with guests and things for months. I didn't run with it for months. No, but you're part... But I got criticized for it for months. Well, because you kind of made hay of it. You made more hay of it than maybe, you know, that... Took the joke too far. Now, again, I have the leeway to do that. Now we get back into a whole other thing. I do have the leeway to do that, but the one thing I don't have that you have is the ability to really do something about it. You're in the game. Like, here's what people... You're in the game, too. We're in the same game. I don't think so. I think you're in a better game than I'm in. How? What's the difference? What's the material difference? You're on the playing field, and I'm in the stands yelling things. Everybody sees you as on the playing field, too. I think. Well, that may be. But and again, back to the point of the rally. That rally, I could have gotten on the field. And people got mad that I didn't. But that was the point. That rally was to deflate a bubble and to do what I think satire does best, which is articulate an intangible feeling that people are having, bring it into focus,
say, you're not alone. It's a real feeling. It's maybe even a positive feeling, a hopeful feeling. In a weird way, it's idealistic, but it's impotent. The next thing I could do is step onto the field and go, so now here's what we're going to do, people. Jones, you get over there. Brooklyn, you grab the canteens.
Yeah.
We're going to get out there. But I don't. That's my failing and my indulgence, but it's done because I feel like I am where I belong. And I feel like I serve the best purpose in my life or in whatever it is that I can. But I don't take any satisfaction in that. And I don't take any satisfaction in just being a critic. Roger Ebert doesn't make movies. So to say like, well, Roger, you're in the game. No, he's not. He's not making movies. He's sitting in a seat going, this movie sucks. That's me. And by the way, very proud to do it. There is no honor in what I do, but I do it as honorably as I can.
In politics, in covering the politics, we don't get involved. I mean, I don't get involved and tell people what to vote for, who to vote for.
Right.
I don't tell people, you know, call your congressman, we need to do this thing. I don't do anything like that. And so to me,
right.
I'm not on the field either. And
I feel like you're defending yourself from things that are not coming at you from me or from our rally or things like that in a way that, again, the really unfair thing is individuals make, it's one of those pictures where it's all made up of little pictures and you go, oh, that's my picture in there. But again, proportionally to what we do, do you think we're not fair to MSNBC? Proportionally.
Actually, I really don't. I don't actually think the false equivalence thing that you feel, that you want to talk about and that you feel defensive about the rally is a major issue. I don't feel like you guys, but I do feel like the left gets, including from you, gets criticized for stuff that we don't deserve because it is more institutional on the right than it is on the left, and that the examples that are called, you know, whether it's Alan Grayson yelling on the floor of the House or it's Code Pink interrupting a rally, are not equivalent to Sharon Angle saying if conservatives don't get what they want, they are going to use guns to get what they want, and she's a U.S. Senate candidate. That's my essential beef. And
you think that we point those out? We've said those are equal.
I think you have done some of that. I don't think it's the main thing that you do when you talk about the media. But the thing that I feel like where we are in the same boat, and you don't accept that we're in the same boat, but I think we are. Yeah. It's like, I remember right after the 2000 election, and I won't keep you here forever, I'm sorry. Right after the 2000 election, you said something I remember it was about George Bush and Dick Cheney. It was right after Bush v. Gore, and you said something to the effect of, Bush said, can we have the recession outside today because the weather's so nice? With the idea being that George Bush is an idiot. He's an infantile person who thinks that recess and recession are the same thing. And after the teabag the White House before they teabag you sign goes on Fox News, we talk about what the whole idea of teabagging it is and how funny it is that they don't get what that word choice means. I sort of feel like we're doing the same thing, that you make, that, you know, essentially you exaggerate in order to be funny or in order to make a point, and everybody understands just a little exaggeration. That's true. But there's a commitment, I think we both have a commitment to not to not lying, to telling the truth even when we are making a point.
As we see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody does. I think I don't doubt that it's genuine. There is a part of me that feels like there is a high-mindedness to news and journalism that doesn't exist. I feel like I do have liberties that you don't have, and I could lose them by stepping into that. And what I would gain in that, I think, is a little bit more dignity, a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like I'd have a little more skin in the game, and I think there's something about that that's more courageous than what we do. So that I very much admire. But I also think, though, that there is a part of me that says, like, these rules have existed for people such as me forever, and we're not the ones bending them. I'm not.
We're getting to be more like you. You're not getting to be more like us.
Kinda.
Until the rally, then you got a little bit more like us.
Yeah, because I felt like in 12 years, I'd earned a moment to tell people who I was.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And you know, this isn't going to be me forever either. And that doesn't mean, you know, I'm going to remember the thing. But in my life, I also try and actually get on the field and help people, just in a different way. Just not through the show.
Not through the show. You're a mensch for spending this much time with us.
I am a mensch.
You are a mensch.
It's a Yiddish word, right? Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, and you can edit this out. I like you. There's, you know, we can have different points about, well, this is a little bit unfair as it goes in there, and I completely agree. Like, what happens in discourse is not precise.
Yeah.
But what is important, I think, is the place that people come from. And it's important to remember, like, when I do those things, I do try and remember where I think people are coming from, and I'm trying to do better in my life remembering that from even those that I really disagree with.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is based on, you know, the whole idea, you know, I don't know if you know this Iranian journalist, Maziar Bahari, but okay, so he was arrested, and there are, like, as I said in the thing, like, there are real enemies in the world, and really just bad, evil things, but there are a lot less of them than we probably, from watching all this stuff, think that there are. And that's all that I just try and remember in my own head to keep saying, because you got to understand, I watch this stuff like, you know, Clockwork Orange. I'm strapped to a chair with my things, you know, like, it just comes out. It's like if you watch local news all the time, you're going to think something terrible is going to happen in your family. A lot. You will feel the fear more than.
I will definitely be afraid of driving for fear of car crashes.
Can I tell you this? Or the intestinal flu. That is. Here's what's the most amazing thing about this interview. I have not thrown up once while we've been doing this, and that is, I believe, that maybe the longest in 24 hours that I have gone. You, my friend, are like ginger root. You are the ginger root of interviewers, in that you have pulled things out of me I never knew were there, and yet still I leave not nauseous. And that is a wonderful gift and a talent that you bring to the news world in a way that most people don't, and I admire that, and I think that's really great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for all the time, John. I really appreciate it. I will shake your hand.
I don't want to do it because I have the boubons.
Okay.
All right. There you go.
It was really nice of Jon Stewart to come over here to do this interview with the stomach flu and everything. I am as much a fan as I ever was. The full untrimmed, too long for TV discussion will be posted at maddowblog.msnbc tomorrow morning. That does it for us tonight. Thank you for watching.